Part 4. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 33. Chapter 33 Lost Contact. Feeling the suppression from heaven and earth, Xuanhuan looked solemn and thought secretly in his heart. I don't know if this kind of suppression has a certain range, or if his own power has a certain range. Once he goes beyond this certain range, he will suffer this inexplicable suppression. After thinking of this, Xuanhuan's face became a little ugly, but it was inevitable that he was a little lucky. Maybe, it was just that this place was suppressed. Thinking of this, Xuanhuan couldn't help but move a few meters to the side and stepped forward again. As expected, that inexplicable suppression appeared again, making his expression darker. Could it be that my power can only work in the villa or around the villa? When he thought of this, Xuanhuan felt his heart tremble. He had already felt the huge gap after having the power and then losing it. It felt like being tied up by layers of ropes, weighing down the mountains, but it was never uncomfortable. He was never willing to lose his strength. Gritting his teeth, Xuanhuan walked to the side again. In this way, Xuanhuan kept walking and testing, trying to find out how big the scope was. This was the first time that Xuanhuan had left the confines of the villa since he had achieved success in cultivation. Otherwise, he would not have known that his power had a certain range until now. Until the sunset filled the mountain, Xuanhuan returned to the door of the villa again. At this time, his face had become extremely ugly. Although, Xuanhuan still couldn't determine whether it was the inexplicable suppression that had a certain scope, or the use of his own power that had a certain scope. However, after Xuanhuan's investigation, it was already clear that the range within which his own power could be used was probably an irregular circular range with a radius of more than 2,000 meters. And his villa was at the boundary of this range, which caused him to be suppressed as soon as he left the villa, and he lost his own power. To be honest, after Xuanhuan became successful in cultivation and had hope of immortality, he no longer thought about going out and running around. With that time, he cultivates at home and keeps moving towards immortality. Doesn't he feel good? If possible, Xuanhuan really wants to stay in the villa to practice and continuously improve his strength until he can suppress the world and reach the point where he can live forever. But, just because he doesn't want to go out, it doesn't mean that he wants to be trapped in one place. These are completely two concepts, one is voluntary and the other is forced. These are two completely different mentality. What's the difference between this and going to jail? It's just that the cell is a little bigger and the environment is a little better. This is completely different from being willing to stay at home. If you don't believe it, ask those otakus and otakus. How many of them are willing to stay in prison? No matter how good the prison environment is, probably no one will. When he returned to the villa, Xuanhuan was in a very bad mood. He sat in the courtyard with a gloomy face, looking at the setting sun on the west mountain in a daze. Alas! It wasn't until the sky turned dark that Xuanhuan came back to his senses and let out a long sigh. There is nothing he can do now but continue to improve his strength, hoping that he will be able to resist the invisible force of suppression in the future. Although he only ate something in the morning, Xuanhuan did not feel hungry. However, the habit he had developed over the years made him instinctively touch his stomach, and then he remembered that he had not eaten anything all day. I wonder how that kid is doing now. Xuanhuan couldn't help but murmured in a low voice, and then suddenly came back to his senses. His face became a little ugly. He had already told Yujujhan to rush back to the villa before dark. But now, the sky has turned completely dark, but there is no movement at all. Looking at the road leading into the mountain outside the villa, a trace of worry flashed through Xuanhuan's mind, but he had to be sure nothing happened. It should be fine. Over the past few days, apart from the ghost I discovered before, I haven't heard of any strange things happening around here. There are not a few people who have spent the night in the mountains, and there are no accidents. What happened? How could it be such a coincidence that we arrived just as they entered the mountain and something happened? Yuan Meng murmured in a low voice to comfort himself, but he stood up involuntarily, paced back and forth, and looked out from time to time, showing his anxiety. Even if they really spend the night in the mountains, they should give themselves a call. Yu Zhuzhen is not such an ignorant person. So stupid. When he thought that Yu Zhuzhen should call him, Yuan Mengke slapped his forehead. He was really confused by the invisible force of suppression. Now is not the old days. If someone doesn't come home for a long time, they can only sit at home and wait without any solution. In today's technologically advanced world, even if we are thousands of miles apart, we can communicate with each other with just a phone call. When he thought of this, Yuan Meng walked quickly towards the house, and at the same time, he felt regretful. He was so stunned that he didn't even need a mobile phone. It's also no wonder that Yuan Meng was immersed in practice. Except for 3 or 2 friends who called him, he basically never touched his mobile phone. It's no wonder that he didn't think of it for a moment. After rummaging around in the house for a while, he finally found his old cell phone, and quickly found Yu Zhuken's phone number and called it. However, beep, beep. The number you dialed is out of service area, please call again later. Listening to the sound coming from the phone, Yuan Meng's face changed immediately, and while dialing again, he walked out of the villa. However, after taking 2 steps, Yuan Meng turned back and turned towards the garage, cursing in his heart. He almost forgot that once he walked out of the villa, his magical ability would be useless. Even if his body was strengthened a lot, he was not affected by the repressive force, but running 3 or 5 miles would not tire him, but it would take a long time. Wouldn't it be a bit stupid to leave a more convenient means of transportation unused? Open the garage and drive out his car, which was almost covered with a layer of dust. Accompanied by the rapid hum of the car engine, Yuan Meng drove out of the villa. He only controlled the door of the villa to close slowly with the remote control in his hand, and then stepped on the accelerator and sped along the road into the mountain. After leaving the villa, Yuan Meng forced himself to endure the discomfort of his body. While driving quickly, he looked at the road ahead, hoping to find the trace of Yu Zhuken's vehicle. But he was disappointed. When he was almost close to the road into the mountain, Yuan Meng did not see any trace of Yu Zhuken's vehicle, which made him more anxious. And just when he came to the entrance of the mountain, a staggering figure suddenly rushed out of the mountain road and appeared in front of the car. Thanks to the book friend 2018012900454905 for the 100 reward. The book friend 134098168681470361 for the 1500 reward. The book friend The Witch of Truth for the 1500 reward. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 34. This sudden appearance of a figure frightened Yuan Meng into slamming on the brakes and turning the steering wheel wildly. In the end, it hit the guardrail beside the road with a bang, and then narrowly avoided the figure. Grass. Yuan Meng, whose body shook violently and whose head almost hit the steering wheel, slapped the steering wheel fiercely, felt an unknown anger in his heart, rushing straight to his forehead. Yuan Meng unbuckled his seat belt, quickly opened the door and got out of the car. With another bang sound, he slammed the door shut, causing the already shaky windshield in front of the car to shatter into pieces. This made the anger in Yuan Meng's heart even more intense, and he wanted to curse the sudden appearance of the figure. Hiss. Taking a deep breath, Yuan Meng strode towards that person. Is it you? Xia Wei. When he got closer to the man, Yuan Meng discovered that this man was not the drunk person he had thought before, but an acquaintance whom he had just met before. It was Xia Wei, the best friend of Yu Zhuken's girlfriend and Yan Ran. After discovering that the figure was Xia Wei, the ominous premonition in Yuan Meng's heart quickly arose. In a hurry, Yuan Meng speeded up again, and in just a few steps, he was in front of Xiaoyue. Ah! No! Don't come here! Go away! Go away quickly! Don't come here, it's fake, everything is fake. However, before Yuan Meng could ask, Xiaoyue, who noticed a figure suddenly appeared in front of her, closed her eyes, waved her hands randomly, screamed and shouted loudly. Yue, Xiaoyue, me. It's me, Yuan Meng, where are your uncle Yuan, Yu Zhizhen, and the others? Yuan Meng, whose eardrums were buzzing due to Xiaoyue's sudden scream, frowned slightly in discomfort, but couldn't care less about it and shouted urgently to Xiaoyue. Ah! Ah! Yuan, Uncle Yuan. You are really Uncle Yuan. Woo woo woo. Uncle Yuan. Woo woo woo. You, please hurry up and save Yan Ran and the others. Woo woo woo. After regaining consciousness for a moment, he realized that the figure in front of him was indeed Yuan Meng. He couldn't help but pounce on him and cried loudly. Okay, don't cry now. Tell Uncle Yuan first what happened to you. Seeing Xiaoyue's situation, Yuan Meng could only be patient, patted Xiaoyue's back, and said softly, even though he was getting increasingly anxious. Woo-oh. Hurry, it's almost too late, let's go into the mountain quickly, I'm afraid if we're a little later, it'll be too late. Perhaps Yuan Meng's comfort had an effect. Xiaoyue was obviously much better. She left Yuan Meng's arms with a little embarrassment, but immediately put on a sad expression and said quickly to Yuan Meng, her expression full of pleading. The helpless Xiaoyue had completely forgotten what Yu Zhizhen once said about Yuan Meng being seriously ill. Or maybe Yuan Meng's calm performance gave Xiaoyue a certain degree of confidence. In addition, at this time, there was no other way but to ask Yuan Meng for help. Looking at Qingping Mountain, Yuan Meng frowned slightly. He was determined to go up the mountain alone, but he was worried that he would waste a lot of time looking for Yu Zhizhen and the others. There are many forked roads on the top of the mountain. If we search one by one, we don't know how long it will take. I don't know if Yu Zhizhen and the others can survive until that time. Don't be anxious, come on. Yue, get on my back. I'll carry you and walk quickly. On the way, tell me what's going on? What happened to you today? Thinking of Yu Zhizhen on the mountain, and feeling Xiaoyue's urgency, Yuan Meng couldn't help but turn around quickly, turned to Xiaoyue and said softly. As for why he had to take Xiaoyue, who was now completely a burden, instead of going up the mountain alone. That's naturally because Yuan Meng needs a guide. Otherwise, if he has to search by himself, when will he find Yu Zhizhen and the others? Yuan Meng doesn't know where Yu Zhizhen and the others got into trouble. Well, okay. I felt like I was filled with lead, and it was almost difficult to move my legs. In addition, the current situation was urgent, and I couldn't care about so many details. Therefore, although Xiaoyue felt a little shy to have Yuan Meng carry her on her back, she only hesitated for a moment before happily agreeing. Yuan Meng bent slightly, and after Xiaoyue leaned over and hugged his neck, he used a gentle force to lift Xiaoyue's delicate body easily. Under Xiaoyue's guidance, he quickly ran towards the mountain along the steps of the mountain road. Although the various mysterious powers in Yuan Meng's body were inexplicably suppressed outside the villa, his growing physical fitness was not suppressed at all. So even if he is carrying Xiaoyue on his back, even on the way up the mountain, it is not a problem at all for Yuan Meng, and he is still running extremely fast. Listening to the whistling wind in her ears and the warmth under her body, Xiaoyue's nervous mood finally relaxed slightly, and she recounted what happened before intermittently. But it turned out that Yu Zhizhen and his group didn't do anything special after leaving the villa and coming to the mountain. It's just that everyone is young after all, and they are a little greedy for the coolness and scenery of the mountains, but they have forgotten the time. When it was getting dark, everyone realized it belatedly, and they heard Yuan Meng's instructions again, so they began to pack their bags slowly and prepare to go down the mountain and return to Yuan Meng's villa. However, everyone was obviously not concerned about the possible dangers in the mountain, as Yuan Meng said. Therefore, when everyone finished packing and laughed and walked halfway, the sky had already completely darkened. In desperation, everyone could only go down the mountain slowly and carefully. If it was just like this, there would be no problem, because although Qingping Mountain has good scenery, it is not so steep. In addition, in recent years, the development of Qingping Mountain scenic tourism has made the rest of the places bright as day, except for the deeper and more primitive places. Especially the roads up and down the mountain, which have been repeatedly protected and repaired, and there is absolutely no dark corner. So it stands to reason that everyone will not be in danger anyway. But the development of things is often so strange, and dangerous things eventually happened. Everyone walked out from the depths of Qingping Mountain and saw the lights. But suddenly, the surroundings became dark in an instant. Not to mention the lights in the distance, even the little stars in the sky and the silver moonlight had disappeared. It was absolutely pitch dark. At first, everyone didn't care. They just thought that the sky was covered by dark clouds. They could only hold hands and grope forward slowly. But as they walked, everyone found something wrong. They clearly remembered that the mountain road was not far away, but they had walked for more than half an hour and still hadn't reached the end of the road. There was still no light around, only darkness, and everyone felt that something was wrong. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 35. At last, everyone found that the light that was clearly visible had already disappeared. There was no light at all. Moreover, the dark environment around was too quiet, without even the sound of birds and insects. The dark environment around them made everyone have bad thoughts. They gathered together, held hands tightly, and quickened their pace. However, before they walked far, they felt a white shadow flashing in front of them, which scared a few people. They just checked carefully, but found nothing, so they had to quicken their pace again. However, the ominous premonition in everyone's heart became stronger. Moreover, it was like opening some kind of mechanism. After that, everyone would see a series of gray, white, or black scary figures flashing in front of them from time to time. Don't ask how they could see the dark figure in such a dark place where they couldn't see their hands in front of their faces. If they hadn't held hands with each other, they could have run away in an instant. In short, the 5 people in the group could see it. Although the figure was a little blurry, they could indeed see it. This made everyone terrified and they screamed and fled in embarrassment. Fortunately, the 2 boys were still a little rational and didn't run around randomly. Instead, they pulled the 3 girls forward. However, no matter how fast they ran or how long they ran, they couldn't get out of that road. The strange figures that appeared in front of everyone became more and more frequent and closer to everyone. In the end, those strange figures were no longer fleeting, but always existed and floated around everyone. After that, those strange figures began to gather together, gradually merged together, and became a strange existence. This strange existence, with a shape that changes and changes, is about 2 meters long. Sometimes it is a human, sometimes it is a beast, sometimes it stands up, sometimes it lies on the ground, and its face changes rapidly. It has all kinds of strange looks, all of which are the most terrifying ghost faces in the hearts of several people. After the strange existence was formed, it did not float in front of everyone again. Instead, it rushed towards everyone at the first time. Although it scared everyone at the beginning. However, it was not hurt, but it just pounced over everyone like a phantom. However, as time passed, the strange thing seemed to have grown up, and gradually began to be able to leave shallow scars on everyone. At this time, several people were completely desperate. In addition to screaming loudly, their bodies had already collapsed to the ground powerlessly. At this time, several people were already dead. Looking at the strange existence that rushed over again, several people instinctively closed their eyes, waved their hands randomly, shouted loudly, and made the last struggle of their lives. Fake. Fake. All this is fake. However, the development of things will obviously not be affected by personal will. At the last moment, Xiaoyue even felt the sharp cold wind touching her throat. Immediately, all the hairs on her body stood up instantly. Xiaoyue felt that her brain was blank and she could not feel anything. At this moment, she was in a wonderful state, empty and unconscious, not aware of life, not afraid of death. There was only one thought in her mind: everything in front of her was illusory, all fake. Then, Xiaoyue felt a dizzy spell, and when she came to her senses again, there was no darkness before, but she was back on the mountain road again. There was no strange existence in front of her. The light in front was even just a few steps away. She could enter the coverage of the light. But around her, there was only Yujukan, who looked around with her in confusion, but did not find anyone else. If it weren't for the scars on the two people's bodies, she would have thought that everything before was an illusion. Yue, go down the mountain quickly and find the police to save our lives. When Yujukan calmed down a little, thinking of his previous experience, he couldn't help but show a thoughtful look, but shouted to Xiaoyue. Ah! But what about you? Xiaoyue looked at Yujukan in surprise. Me? How could I leave Yanran alone and escape alone? Yujukan said firmly. Okay. Go quickly, we are waiting for you to save our lives. As he said that, Yujukan also showed a forced smile to Xiaoyue, and then closed his eyes and muttered something in his mouth. Yanran, I'm coming to see you. Weird, weird. After a moment, in Xiaoyue's astonished eyes, Yujukan's figure gradually faded and finally disappeared. After Yujukan disappeared, Xiaoyue seemed to see the dark space again: Zhao Li and his girlfriend, the disappeared Yujukan, her best friend and Yanran, and the strange existence. And when Xiaoyue saw the dark space began to gradually solidify and enveloped her, as if to pull her in again. Instinctively, Xiaoyue took several steps back, turned around staggeringly, and ran toward the light. Taking advantage of the bright light, Xiaoyue suppressed the fear in her heart and ran quickly down the mountain. If the mountain road hadn't been so steep, Xiaoyue would have probably rolled down the cliff in her current state. What follows next is the scene that happened before. Xiaoyue panicked and chose the right path. In other words, he didn't pay attention to his surroundings at all, and just wanted to find the management here quickly, so he rushed directly into the middle of the road and almost didn't get hit by Yuan Meng's car. It has to be said that Yuan Meng's current physical fitness has definitely reached the ranks of human beings. Even compared to the top special forces, his physical fitness is much better. When Xiaoyue recounted these experiences after a while, Yuan Meng had arrived on the mountain. Then, right over there. When they came to the last street light entering the mountain, Xiaoyue lay on Yuan Meng's back, put her arm around Yuan Meng's neck, pointed forward with the other hand, and said tremblingly. Well, I understand, just wait here. Yuan Meng nodded and put Xiaoyue down from his back. Oh. It was not just that she was too tired physically, that she was scared in her heart, or both. When she landed on the ground, Xiaoyue's body softened and she almost fell to the ground. She also quickly held onto the lamppost beside her to prevent herself from falling to the ground. Of falling. Just wait here, don't run around. Yuan Meng looked at Xiaoyue and saw that she was standing firm. He gave a casual instruction, turned around and ran in the direction Xiaoyue pointed. Hey! Xiaoyue, who was leaning against the lamppost behind her, stretched out her hand and opened her mouth slightly, but in the end she did not stop Yuan Meng, but looked at Yuan Meng with a complicated expression as she walked to the place where Yu Zhihan last disappeared. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 36. At this time, Yuan Meng had no time to pay attention to Xia Wei behind him. When he came to the place where Xia Wei pointed, he suddenly exclaimed in surprise, and his body could not help but stagnate slightly. "Ah! Uncle Yuan, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?" Xia Wei, who was already nervous, asked nervously when she heard the noise, and even moved forward a few steps. "It's okay. It's okay. I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me, just don't run around there." After hearing Xia Wei's nervous inquiry, Yuan Meng looked back at Xia Wei, who was walking towards him, and hurriedly replied. At the same time, he once again told her not to run around. If she couldn't help, at least she shouldn't make trouble. Looking at the hazy forest in front of him, Yuan Meng's palm slowly raised up. He was still a little nervous, but now he had let it go a little. A faint red light lit up on Yuan Meng's palm, which was the manifestation of his blood and qi. That's right, it was his blood and qi. The reason why Yuan Meng was surprised and even stopped was because he found that when he came to this area, the various mysterious powers in his body that had been suppressed to the limit and could not be used at all had been fully restored. Along with the power of blood and qi, it appeared on Yuan Meng's palm, and the space in front of him began to produce a little ripple, and a dark space was looming. Looking at this dark space, Yuan Meng did not hesitate at all and strode into it. Huh! Standing under the street light, Xia Wei couldn't help rubbing her eyes. She seemed to see a red light coming out of Uncle Yuan's hand just now. Unfortunately, it was only a flash, and she didn't see it too clearly. Yuan Meng had disappeared, and he should have entered the dark space. Helplessly, Xia Wei could only suppress the fear in her heart and stand under the street light waiting. The mountain breeze that used to be refreshing seemed to become colder now, causing Xia Wei to tighten her dress, which was not very useful. She hugged her arms together, trembled slightly, stamped her feet, and looked at the dark forest that seemed to be able to swallow everything. Yan ran. Although we were not born on the same day of the same month of the same year, we will die here on the same day of the same month of the same year. Yu Zhihan, who was covered with wounds and in a mess, hugged and Yan ran tightly in his arms, showing a far-fetched but happy smile. You are so stupid, really. You have already escaped, why do you come back to die? Lying in Yu Zhihan's arms, and Yan ran, who was also bleeding and in a mess, stretched out her jade hand to touch Yu Zhihan's cheek, and said with a slightly disappointed tone. At this moment, although she was facing a situation where she was doomed to die, she no longer had the fear of dying, but only a trace of deep reluctance. She had not really become Yu Zhihan's bride yet, so how could she die here? Especially Yu Zhihan, he really shouldn't have died here with her. Of course, and Yan Ran's heart was actually filled with warmth, touching and sweetness. Although she complained that Yu Zhihan returned to die. But Yu Zhihan really returned for her with the idea of dying, how could she not feel deeply touched and sweet in her heart? If Yu Zhihan really left her alone to escape, would she really not feel the slightest resentment while being glad that Yu Zhihan escaped? I'm afraid she herself is not sure. Looking at the hideous bloody mouth, thinking of the strange existence that they pounced on, a strong fear arose uncontrollably from the bottom of their hearts. Even though their hearts were filled with touching and sweetness at this time, they could not stop the arising of this fear. At the same time, there seemed to be a whisper, and a sentence full of chaotic and disordered mumbling, which sounded in the minds of the two. It was unclear what these mumblings were saying, but when these voices sounded, there was an uncontrollable madness and fear that continued to grow in the hearts of the two. The limbs of the body became stiff and numb, and the eyes became confused and full of fear. They could only watch as the strange existence pounced fiercely on the two. Seeing that the strange existence was about to bite the two, Yujukan bit his tongue fiercely, and summoned the last bit of strength in his body. He turned his body violently, facing the strange existence, and protected Yan ran in his arms firmly under his body. Every extra time he delayed, there was a hope of survival. Since he was going to die, he was willing to use his last bit of strength to fight for the hope of survival for his beloved girl. No. Feeling all this, Yan ran couldn't help but scream loudly even though she knew she was going to die. Bang. When the two heard the loud bang, they couldn't help but close their eyes tightly and hugged the person in front of them tightly. Hey. I say, can we show our affection in private again? There is still an older single dog here. After waiting for a long time, the two did not hear any other movement, but only heard a teasing voice in front of them. Ah! Hearing someone's voice, Yujukan and the others hurriedly opened their eyes and looked in front of them. Originally, Yujukan and the others thought they would not see it, but who would have thought that this originally dark space would now usher in a second color besides the strange existence. I saw a faint red light emitting, showing its own extraordinary figure, standing quietly in front of the two people, looking down at the two people who were in a very embarrassed state, but still did not forget to spread the dog food. Are you Uncle Yuan? After carefully identifying it, Yujukan asked uncertainly. Hey, it's not just me. You are really good at turning my words on deaf ears. Yuan Meng mocked lightly. By the way, Uncle Yuan, why are you here? Did you touch Xia Wei? And what's going on with you? Looking at Yuan Meng's mysterious appearance, although Yujukan was a little embarrassed after hearing Yuan Meng's words, he felt relieved a little and thought about asking Yuan Meng what was going on. Ah! Be careful! At this moment, Yan ran screamed fiercely. It turns out that weird existence has attacked again. Snort. Yuan Meng snorted coldly, raised his right fist that was shining with light red light, and punched the strange being that was rushing towards him. The light red light all over the body rushed towards the right fist at this moment, which made the light red light on the right fist instantly turn red, like a burning flame, directly hitting the weird, above the body. Bang! As if it was hit hard by a fast-moving heavy truck, the weird existence was hit by Yuan Meng's punch and flew backwards at a faster speed. For Yujukan and others, the extremely powerful strange existence seemed so weak when facing Yuan Meng. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 37. A euro asterisk a backslash U0026 hashtag yo hashtag. The strange existence that flew backwards may have known that it could not compete with Yuan Meng in close combat, and was knocked away again. It did not rush up again, but stood in place and made strange sounds, and its body shape was even more strange and distorted. When hearing those sounds and seeing the changing and distorted body shape, one can't help but feel a strong sense of fear in the heart. And in the fear, there will be a trace of indescribable madness, and it will become deeper and deeper, wanting to destroy everything in front of him. Even Yujukan and the other two behind him looked at Yuan Meng with the wrong look in their eyes. Ugh! Kill! 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 Suddenly, two crazy, hoarse and gloomy voices rang out from a man and a woman. Zhao Eli, who had already collapsed to the ground and was unconscious, and his girlfriend Tang Yuping, were struggling to get up with twisted bodies and staggering towards Yuan Meng. Looking at their scarlet eyes filled with madness, fear, murderous intent, and confusion, Yuan Meng couldn't help but frown. Although he didn't know what was going on, he knew that it should be related to the sound made by the strange existence. Although Yuan Meng felt that the sound made by the strange existence was extremely harsh and unpleasant, he didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He just didn't know why other people would change like this after hearing it. Looking at the side again, Yujukan and Yan ran, whose eyes gradually turned scarlet, and a trace of fear, madness, and confusion gradually spread. Yuan Meng no longer considered the reason, but stomped on the ground fiercely. With a bang, a hole exploded under his feet, and his figure suddenly shot out. In just a blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of the strange existence, and the red blood flames rose around him. This time, Yuan Meng could be said to have mobilized the blood of his whole body, and his muscles and bones crackled, and his whole body strength condensed into a stream. His fists seemed to be bigger, and he smashed into the strange existence in front of him. Facing Yuan Meng's attack, the strange existence only had time to stretch out its twisting forelimbs and make a defensive posture, and it was hit hard. But this time, unlike the previous time, it was not just knocked out. Yuan Meng had used all his strength this time, so how could it be so easy to block? Boom! Puff! Bang! As if crushing with withered wood and rotten wood, Yuan Meng had already broken the forelimbs of the strange being, and the remaining force was not reduced. His right fist had already smashed through the chest of the strange being with a puff sound, and deeply immersed in its body. The strong blood and qi in Yuan Meng's body, like a surging river, flowed along his right arm and right fist, and continuously immersed in the body of the strange being. Bang! After a loud bang, the strange being exploded as a whole, turning into star-like fragments, and exploded in all directions. Watching this scene, the star power in Yuan Meng's body shook, and instantly surged out of his body, turning into a gorgeous galaxy, appearing outside his body, and the star-like fragments that shot towards the crowd were all intercepted by the galaxy. After all, the strange being was not a good person at all, and it was better for everyone not to touch the fragments scattered on its body. Scenes like this are all overwritten in movies, TV shows, and novels. The big boss is defeated in the end, and then because of a small mistake made by everyone, the boss's remains are contaminated. Then, there are 2, 3, 4, and 5 subsequent seasons. Yuan Meng doesn't want to make such a mistake. As for why the blood and qi energy are not used for interception, the blood and qi are violent and masculine, and such interception and defense are very effective for oneself. But this kind of out-of-body defense covering a large area is extremely consuming, and not very good at it. As the strange existence exploded, Yu Jukan, Zhao Li and others also woke up one after another, looking around in a daze, not knowing what happened. What is this? Immediately, they were attracted by the gorgeous galaxy in front of them. However, Yuan Meng ignored everyone, just waved his hand, and the galaxy that intercepted the fragments of the strange existence rolled back in an instant and merged into his body again. The moment the galaxy merged into his body again, Yuan Meng felt something different. He felt that the galaxy energy in his body not only did not suffer any loss due to intercepting the strange fragments, but instead increased. The most important thing is that Yuan Meng felt that the quality of the galaxy energy not only did not become complicated due to the integration of those strange fragments, but became more pure, which made him extremely surprised and puzzled. However, at this time, Yuan Meng did not spend time to study the meaning of those, because this dark space did not dissipate with the death of the strange existence. Sure enough, I saw that the strange fragments that were not intercepted by Yuan Meng gathered together at this time and reformed the strange existence. The most important thing is that the strange existence did not show the slightest weakness. Yuan Meng frowned slightly, exerted force again, and his figure flashed out, using his palm instead of a knife to slash at it fiercely. Bang! The strange being was cut in half by Yuan Meng again, and exploded into pieces with a bang. And the result was no different from before. At the moment of the explosion, the fragments began to gather again and turned into a strange existence again. How is this possible? Yu Jukan, Zhao Li, and the other 4 were shocked by the scene before their eyes. They were all speechless and at a loss. Facing such an immortal existence, how could they fight? Looking at the strange existence that gathered again, Yuan Meng's eyebrows were tightly frowned. In the blink of an eye, Yefeng's right fist was clenched, and stars were scattered, as if a galaxy was wrapped around his right arm. Boom! Flashing in front of the strange existence again, he punched hard. This time, when hitting the strange existence and blowing it up, Yuan Meng did not stop, but his mind flashed, and the galaxy wrapped around his hand immediately swelled violently, including the countless strange fragments. Then under Yuan Meng's control, the galaxy began to operate according to a specific law, that is, in the way the Zhoutian star array in the prehistoric world operates. Although, that kind of operation method will not really produce any special effect, after all, there is no real formation in the real world. The sun, moon, and stars in the sky are just ordinary sun, moon and stars, not the Zhoutian stars in myths and legends, and will not be guided by the power of the stars to exert extraordinary power. But this kind of operation method is more impressive, isn't it? Although the four people over there can't see anything. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 38. In fact, there is another point, that is, the galaxy that manifests the star energy has evolved into a great star array that is the same as that of the prehistoric world. It can resonate with the stars of the prehistoric world, and it can even be controlled without Yuan Meng. It can operate on its own, saving Yuan Meng a lot of mental energy. And as the star river circulated, the strange fragments of existence wrapped in it began to be erased bit by bit, and finally dissipated. As expected, the quantity of star energy has increased again, and the quality has also been slightly improved. However, what was different from Yuan Meng's previous thoughts was that he thought that by completely erasing this strange existence, he could completely end this battle. However, in this dark space, bits of starlight suddenly emerged, and waves of terrifying and weird evil sounds sounded in this dark space, wiping away people's sanity and arousing the deepest madness and fear in people's hearts. And despair. Even Yuan Meng's mind was slightly disturbed, causing his eyebrows to frown deeply involuntarily. Not to mention Yu Zhuzhan, Zhao Eli, and the others, in just an instant, everyone was completely immersed in it. Kill! He roared crazily, his eyes no longer clear at all, only chaos and madness remained. Town! Yuan Meng suddenly shouted loudly, raised his hands in seals at the same time, stepped on the ground with his right foot, and a vast power suddenly spread. The sounds and thoughts that penetrated deep into the soul and made people crazy seemed to be suppressed at this moment and could never be heard again. The crazy thoughts in the hearts of Yu Zhuzhan and the other four people were also suppressed and calmed down at this moment. No, at this moment, even all their own thoughts were suppressed by Yuan Meng. There was no more fluctuation in their hearts, and the whole brain there was a blank space in the middle, and the body fell softly to the ground. At this time, Yuan Meng did not pay much attention to the four people who fell to the ground. After all, they were just frightened by the aura they exuded. As long as this aura was dissipated, they would soon wake up. Therefore, Yuan Meng just shouted again. Support the heaven and the earth, suppress the universe. The sound was so powerful that it spread throughout the dark space, causing even the slightest ripples. It was even possible to see some of the outside world. And around Yuan Meng, there was a circle of ripples, and a mountain peak loomed, shrouding his body. And the moment the mountain peak appeared, an indomitable will spread out to the surroundings. And within the scope of this indomitable will, it's like the chaos has been separated and the darkness has been broken. A faint, soft light that came from nowhere broke through the darkness in an instant. This caused a small area of land with Yuan Meng as the core to be separated independently from this dark space, forming another independent and bright small world. And the looming mountain peak that covers Yuan Meng's body is the core of this small world, and it is the Buzhu mountain that supports the world. In fact, It is not wrong to say this, because the mountain peak shrouded outside Yuanmeng is the projection of Buzhu Mountain in Yuanmeng's ancient world. Although it cannot be as magical as in the prehistoric world, it can really support the heaven and earth and suppress the universe. But in the outside world, it can also be like the sword intention, fist intention, and so on described in the novel. As the artistic conception of Yuanmeng's spiritual will, it has the spiritual will of Buzhu Mountain. Generally evil thoughts can still be suppressed. Grumble. Perhaps feeling threatened, an urgent scream came from the dark space. Stars, filled with twisted and chaotic light, emerged from the darkness and quickly gathered together to reform the same thing as before. 1. Exactly the same weird existence. Looking around Yuanmeng, at the small world with a faint and soft light, a wave of mental fluctuations mixed with anger, fear, and distortion and chaos rushed towards Yuanmeng. It's a pity that this spirit was quickly suppressed after entering the small world formed by the projection of Buzhu Mountain. At this moment, the invisible spirit seemed to have turned into a tangible object. It fell to the ground in an instant and turned into a small, constantly twisting black shadow, struggling to exit this small world. However, being shrouded by Buzhu Mountain's will to suppress the universe, it could only twist and struggle in vain, unable to move even a hair. Moreover, there are traces of pure power that were stripped out of the black shadow and quietly integrated into this small world, enhancing its power. Yuanmeng was not too surprised by this. After all, the galaxy he had manifested with the power of the stars had also been enhanced when he destroyed the fragments of the strange existence. Yuanmeng looked slightly surprised, glanced at the constantly twisting black shadow, and slightly slowed down the speed of stripping away its power. Because when Yuanmeng stripped off its power and integrated it into this small world, he clearly felt that the power of the black shadow was rapidly recovering while being extracted. This means that as long as it is not destroyed instantly, it can be restored to its original state, which naturally surprises Yuanmeng. You must know that the twisted black shadow is just the spiritual impact of that weird existence, which was suppressed by Buzhu Mountain and was shrouded by Buzhu Mountain. Where did it get its power from? No matter how weird it is, it must follow the law of conservation of energy. It must have a source to restore its power. However, what made Yuanmeng frown was that no matter how he explored, he did not find anything. In addition, now was not a good time to explore, so Yuanmeng withdrew his mind from exploring. With a thought, he instantly drained all the power of the black shadow and turned it into nothingness. Yuanmeng then locked his eyes on the strange existence in the dark space again. Seeing that his attack was ineffective, the strange existence seemed to be more anxious and angry, but it seemed to care about the small world of light, just moving restlessly in the dark space. And constantly changing its body shape and appearance, a low evil voice sounded from the heart, trying to evoke the deepest madness and fear in Yuanmeng's heart. Unfortunately, this was destined to be futile. With the suppression and protection of Mount Buzhu, Yuanmeng did not feel any discomfort. Yuanmeng was extremely surprised by the strange existence's behavior. Could it be that this strange existence really had its own wisdom? However, Yuanmeng did not intend to stop and have a good exchange with this strange existence just because it might have its own wisdom. Even if he could communicate, he would have to suppress it completely before trying to communicate with it. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 39. The Buzhu Mountain is falling, and a seal is turning the sky. Suppress. Yuanmeng raised his arm high and suddenly dropped it. In an instant, the shadow of the Buzhu Mountain that enveloped him collapsed and broke, as if the world was overturned and time and space collapsed. The shadow of the Buzhu Mountain fell straight into the dark space in front. While falling, the shadow of the Buzhu Mountain changed its shape and turned into a huge seal that covered the sky, which fell down with a huge force. Gua. The strange existence howled shrilly and wanted to dodge, but the surrounding space was already locked by the seal. The strange existence couldn't even move its body, so how could it avoid the seal that covered the sky and the sun? Seeing that the seal was about to come, the body of the strange existence suddenly expanded, and it wanted to end itself. Fortunately, after Yuan Meng's attack, it was reborn in this dark space. Unfortunately, the heaven-flipping seal not only locked the space around it, but also locked its spirit. With the spiritual will of the strange existence, it was impossible to break free from the lock of the heaven-flipping seal, let alone self-destruction. The body could expand a circle, which was already the limit of what it could do. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the strange existence was finally suppressed under the heaven-flipping seal. Then the heaven-flipping seal changed and turned into the majestic and magnificent Buzhu Mountain, which firmly suppressed the evil strange existence. At the same time, a stream of extremely high-quality pure energy was continuously extracted from the body of the strange existence and integrated into the mountain body of Buzhu Mountain. In an instant, Yuan Meng felt a sense of relief. After all, the shadow of Buzhu Mountain was the projection of Buzhu Mountain in Yuan Meng's prehistoric world. If it wanted to manifest outside, it would consume Yuan Meng's power continuously. But at this moment, the source of power that maintained the existence of the projection of Mount Buzhu was directly transferred from Yuan Meng to the strange being. And the power of the strange being seemed endless. As long as it was not drained out in an instant and killed him completely. Then no matter how much power was extracted, it could be quickly replenished. Not only could it maintain the existence of the projection of Mount Buzhu, but it also had a large amount of energy surplus. And this also made Mount Buzhu, which was originally just an illusory projection, begin to condense continuously because of the integration of these excess energies, and it was also growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Finally, after a quarter of an hour, the illusory projection of Mount Buzhu completely condensed into substance, like a real mountain. And at this time, Mount Buzhu had truly become the Buzhu Mountain that stood tall and upright. Of course, this standing tall and upright was naturally not for the blue star outside, but for this dark space. The bottom of Mount Buzhu merged with the land of this dark space, suppressing the land of the dark space, and the top of Mount Buzhu had already touched the top of the dark space. That is, at this moment, the entire dark space was filled with strands of pure energy, which was constantly integrated into Mount Buzhu. Although it was not as powerful as the power of the strange existence extracted, it was also very considerable. It was even more powerful than Yuan Meng's one-day practice, and it was continuous and did not stop for a moment. A faint light, from nowhere, illuminated the entire dark space. At this moment, Yuan Meng only felt that the entire dark space. No, it can no longer be called a dark space at this time. Although it can't be said to be as bright as day, it also has a hazy glow that allows people to see things clearly. Now this space should be called Mount Buzhu Space, or Mount Buzhu Small World, meaning a small world derived from Mount Buzhu as the core. Yuan Meng felt as if the entire small world derived from Buzhu Mountain had become his body and limbs, and could be controlled at will, making him feel like he was in the midst of the wilderness. Looking at the four people of Yujukan who were still confused in the distance, Yuan Meng's heart moved. He did not use any of his own strength, but just waved his hand lightly. In an instant, the space changed, and Yujukan and the other four appeared in front of him in an instant. Is it really feasible? Yuan Meng couldn't help but murmur in a low voice, full of disbelief. He never thought that he just wanted to suppress the strange existence with Buzhu Mountain, but now it has formed such a small world of Buzhu Mountain that can be completely controlled by himself. However, to exercise such power, it is also necessary to pay a high price. Looking at the projection of Buzhu Mountain that has become extremely illusory in an instant, Yuan Meng seemed to have some understanding in his heart. Feeling the strange existence under the projection of Buzhu Mountain, because the projection of Buzhu Mountain has become weak, it is struggling harder. Yuan Meng frowned slightly, and his mind merged with the projection of Mount Buzhu, which instantly increased its power. He extracted the power of the strange existence and the small world more quickly, making Mount Buzhu solidify again and firmly suppress the strange existence again. Although he could not control and use this small world at will, Yuan Meng was also very satisfied. After all, this was in the real world, not his half-real and half-virtual prehistoric world. And the benefits he gained were not just that. But Yuan Meng looked at Yu Jukan and the other 4 people under his feet. Now was obviously not the time to investigate carefully. He should take them back to the villa and settle them down first. Pop. Thinking of this, Yuan Meng stretched out his hand and lightly snapped his fingers. Although the sound was light, it seemed to be able to cleanse the soul, sweeping through the souls of the 4 people like a breeze and a spring. The 4 people of Yu Jukan, who were affected by the strange existence and suppressed by the Buzhu mountain, calmed their confused but blank souls. By the way, he mobilized some of the power of this small world to slightly repair the injuries of several people. Although they did not fully recover, there were only some superficial injuries. As for why their injuries were not completely repaired? Haha, although the Buzhu mountain small world is hidden, it is only a matter of time before it is discovered. When the official investigates, what happened today will definitely be investigated clearly. You must know that Qingping Mountain has a lot of surveillance, and when everyone goes down the mountain from here, their bodies are covered with blood, which will definitely cause an official investigation. If their injuries were completely healed, they would be covered in blood, but they didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. Wouldn't that mean that they must have problems? Therefore, it was better to leave some superficial injuries on Yu Jukan and the others, which would have no effect anyway. Accompanied by the sound of soft calls, Yu Jukan and the other 4 woke up in a daze one after another, looking at the bright surroundings in a daze. What is this? Monster? Ghost? The next moment, 4 screams rang out, looking around in horror, as if the strange existence was right beside them. However, after discovering that there was no strange existence around and that they were no longer in the dark space, they slowly relaxed. It was at this time that Yu Jukan and the others noticed Yuan Meng in front of them, and the Buzhu mountain that was so high that they could not see the top. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 40. Looking at the towering Buzhu mountain in front of them, Yu Jukan and the 4 others were stunned for a while. They didn't understand what was going on, and how could such a steep and high mountain suddenly appear here. Yu Jukan has been to Qingping Mountain more than once, but he has never found such a steep mountain here, as if it towers over the sky. Uncle Yuan. After a long time like this, everyone came back to their senses and turned their attention to Yuan Meng again. Well, you saw me, this is really not easy. Yuan Meng joked. Hey, how can I not see Uncle Yuan? It's just that the monster is too scary. When the monster was mentioned, the bodies of Yu Jukan and the others could not help but tremble slightly again, and their faces turned slightly pale. Obviously, the strange existence left a deep psychological shadow on these 4 people. It will probably take a long time before the influence of the strange existence can be somewhat relieved. But at this moment, Yuan Meng suddenly sounded suspicious and looked in the direction of Buzhu Mountain. To be more precise, it was the strange existence that was suppressed by Buzhu Mountain. What's wrong? Yuan Meng's sudden move immediately made the 4 people in Yu Jukan feel nervous again. They huddled together and looked around nervously. Oh? It's nothing. Let's go back. Yuan Meng withdrew his gaze, shook his head gently, and did not explain anything, just said lightly. Oh. Okay. Okay. Hearing Yuan Meng say that he wanted to go back, Yu Jukan and the other 4 nodded hurriedly in response. Although this place seemed different from before, there was another mountain peak that surprised them greatly. But after being frightened by Yuan Meng again, They had no intention of exploring the reason at this time. They just wanted to leave here quickly and never come back here. Let's go. Yuan Meng waved and motioned for the four of them to leave with him. Well, okay. Yu Zhichen and four others quickly followed Yuan Meng, but when they saw this bright but deserted space, they couldn't help but ask. Uncle Yuan, where is this place? How do we leave? Well, you can think of this as a small world that is dependent on Blue Star but exists independently. You can imagine it as the legendary cave heaven and paradise. As for how to leave? In fact, in such a small world, as long as we are far away from the center of this small world, which is the mountain behind us, as long as we have firm belief, we can leave. Yuan Meng thought for a while and then explained to everyone that although it should be different in fact, it should not be much different. Oh, is that so? No wonder Xia Wei and I have left here before. We must have met the conditions at that time. And after I came back here again, it was only with firm belief that I was able to it's achieved. After listening to Yuan Meng's explanation, Yu Zhichen said thoughtfully. And when she heard that Yu Zhichen had returned to the space again, and Yan Ran, who was still a little weak, held Yu Zhichen's arm with more strength, with a look of tenderness, happiness and distress on her face. Yuan Meng, who was fed a mouthful of dog food, couldn't help but speed up his pace again. As for him leading the way, why would he still know the movements of the people behind him? Well, everything in the entire Buzhu Mountain world is under his control. Naturally, every move of the people behind him cannot escape his observation. Although this small world was named Buzhu Mountain Small World by Yuan Meng, compared to the real prehistoric place where Buzhu Mountain is located, even if it is just a corner of the prehistoric place, the difference is completely unreasonable. In fact, the area of Buzhu Mountain Small World is not very large, only about 10 miles to the left and right, and most of it is occupied by Buzhu Mountain. Therefore, with Yuan Meng's secret help, a few people quickly arrived at the border of Buzhu Mountain Small World. Just stay here. Now you just need to keep saying silently in your heart, I want to go out, I want to go out, and continue to strengthen your beliefs, and then you can go out from here. After arriving at the boundary of Buzhu Mountain Small World, Yuan Meng said to several people. Well, I got it, Uncle Yuan. Several people nodded in agreement, and at the same time kept chanting silently in their hearts, and even closed their eyes one after another in order to strengthen what they were thinking. And as several people continued to chant silently, the space around them immediately began to ripple lightly. Perhaps Yu Zhichen had entered and exited the space in this way, so the two of them quickly disappeared into the space in the faint ripples. Then Zhao Li and Tang Yuping also left this space one after another. At this time, Yuan Mengfang waved his sleeves, took a gentle step, and already left the small world of Buzhu Mountain. When Yuan Meng left the Buzhu Mountain little world, he saw Xia Wei running towards a few people quickly. I thought you couldn't come out. I was scared to death. After arriving in front of several people, Xia Wei hugged and Yan ran and cried and laughed, constantly choking. Okay, aren't we coming out? And Yan Ran also hugged Xia Wei, comforting her and patting her back gently. From this, it can be seen that the two of them really regarded each other as their good sisters. When Xia Wei's mind calmed down a little, everyone took advantage of the lights on the roadside and walked down the mountain. When he walked out of the influence range of the Buzhu Mountain, Yuan Meng's footsteps paused again. Even though he had experienced it many times, this sudden weakness still made him a little uncomfortable. Along the way, everyone seldom spoke, and they all hurried on their way silently. Whenever the wind blew through the bushes, the shadows swayed with rustling sounds, which always made Yu Zhichen and the other five startled. If it weren't for Yuan Meng beside him, who gave them a lot of comfort and courage, it would be hard to guarantee that they would not slip and fall down the mountain if they went down the mountain in their state. When Yuan Meng and his friends went down the mountain, they saw a lot of people surrounding his car, and even a police car parked on the side of the road. There were 2 or 3 traffic police, checking something in front of his car. Seeing this scene, the Yuan Meng Alliance quickly stepped forward and separated everyone to the car. Are you the owner of the car? Looking at Yuan Meng walking forward, everyone looked over, and the traffic police in front of him even asked. Ah, yes, yes. I am the owner of the car. Yuan Meng smiled widely and said with a smile. Your car? What happened? A traffic policeman who looked like a captain looked Yuan Meng up and down for a while before asking. Hey. It's my nephew and his friends. They came down the mountain a little late and got lost in the mountains. Fortunately, their cell phones still had signal, so they called me. I came here in a hurry, and I didn't pay attention, and this happened. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 41. Next, Yuan Meng told the traffic police what happened one by one, including Xiaoyu's sudden rush out, his violent steering wheel, and crashing into the roadside railing. He did not hide anything. Because it was meaningless. Qingping Mountain is a well-known tourist attraction nearby. There are too many surveillance cameras here. It is impossible to hide those things. It was just said that Xiaoyu came out by coincidence and wanted to go down the mountain for help. As for everything that happened in the mountain, that dark space, the small world of Buzhu Mountain, it was naturally impossible to say. Comrade, I have to say something to you. Since someone got lost in the mountains, why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you call for help? And you went into the mountains alone to look for them. How dangerous it is. And you even carried a girl on your back. What if something happened? Are you going to send them as a group? After listening to Yuan Meng's narration, and looking at the embarrassed appearance of Yu Jukan and the other 5 people who came in, the captain couldn't help but frowned and scolded Yuan Meng repeatedly. Yes, yes, next time something like this happens, I will definitely call the police first. I forgot because I was anxious. Next time? Do you want a next time? Aha. No, no. There will definitely not be a next time. Hee hee. Well, I'm not saying anything bad about you, how could you forget this? And, how are they? I think they bleed a lot. Do they need to go to the hospital? At the end, the traffic police looked at the appearance of Yu Jukan and others, and asked with concern again. Ah. You said they are fine, they were scratched by the bushes in the mountains, they are just some superficial injuries, just apply some medicine when you go back. Really fine. No, no, really fine. Facing the eyes of the crowd, Yu Jukan and the others also bit the bullet and shook their heads repeatedly. After confirming that the few people really didn't need to go to the hospital, Yuan Meng paid the fine and let them go. Since Yuan Meng's car was hit badly and the front windshield was completely broken, it was naturally impossible to drive it again, so he asked the traffic police to call a tow truck. And Yuan Meng drove Yu Jukan and the others' car and took everyone back to the villa. While driving with Yu Jukan and the others, Yuan Meng was thankful that some traffic regulations and laws on Blue Star were more relaxed than those on Earth in his previous life, otherwise he would not be able to get away so easily. Before they were halfway through, the 5 people of Yu Jukan, who were sleepy and exhausted and had been in a state of high tension, soon fell into a deep sleep after relaxing their spirits. They were silent all the way. After returning to the villa, Yuan Meng woke them up, washed them up in a hurry, and arranged for them to go back to their rooms to sleep. Well, because of the previous experience, they did not have a room for each person, but one room for boys and one room for girls. Returning to the bedroom, Yuan Meng did not sleep. Since he had made some progress in his practice, he rarely slept. Most of the time, he practiced instead of sleeping, or entered the chaos and the prehistoric world. Lying on the bed at this time, Yuan Meng closed his eyes, and his mind moved slightly, and he had already transformed into a figure on the top of Buzhu Mountain in the prehistoric world. And Tianzan, Hades, and Renhuang were already here. In fact, they had been waiting here for a long time. Although not much time had passed in the outside world, the time flow in the prehistoric world was extremely fast, and now nearly billions of years had passed. During these billions of years, Tianzan, Mingdi, and Renhuang have never left Buzhu Mountain. One is to observe the changes in Buzhu Mountain and feel the source of the changes, and the other is to wait for Yuan Meng's arrival. When the shadow of Buzhu Mountain appeared in Yuan Meng's dark space, the Buzhu Mountain in the prehistoric world had already begun to change slowly. Although this change was extremely slow, it has been continuing, and it is still changing now. This is also the reason why Tianzan and the other three have been here, and why Yuan Meng himself can't wait to enter the prehistoric world. After Yuan Meng showed up, he nodded slightly to Tianzan and the other three, and then closed his eyes, and his mind merged into Buzhu Mountain. Although in theory, Tianzan and the other three are also the masters of the prehistoric world, Tianzan is the existence that controls the operation of the heavenly way. In an instant, he can know everything that happens in the prehistoric world. But there are some things that only Yuan Meng himself can do. For example, the changes that happened in Buzhu Mountain at this time. The three of them were naturally clear about the changes that had taken place in the Buzhu Mountain in the prehistoric times, but they were not clear about the root of the changes, and only knew that it should be related to reality. After Yuan Meng's mind merged into the Buzhu Mountain, he immediately knew all the changes and the reasons. At this time, the Buzhu Mountain was constantly absorbing the strange existence extracted by the Buzhu Mountain projection and the power of the small world from the Buzhu Mountain projection in the Buzhu Mountain small world through the connection in the dark. In other words, the Buzhu Mountain projection was constantly feeding back to the Buzhu Mountain body, which made the Buzhu Mountain more powerful. And you have to know that the power extracted from the strange existence and the small world is extremely pure, and its energy level is even higher than Yuan Meng's own power. And Yuan Meng has evolved infinite chaos and vast prehistoric times with his own spiritual power. What will happen if this energy, which is more advanced than Yuan Meng's own power, is injected into the prehistoric world? Moreover, it is not just that. The most important thing is the nature of that energy. No matter whether the energy is weak or strong, one thing is certain, that is, it comes from reality, and it is many dimensions higher than the prehistoric world. At the beginning, an inconspicuous dust directly evolved into an infinite star in the prehistoric world, and even almost destroyed the prehistoric world and crushed the chaos. From this, we can see how big the gap between the prehistoric world and reality is. And is the energy in the real world weaker than the dust in the real world? That is obviously impossible. In fact, if it were not instinctive, the main body of Buzhu Mountain would only absorb some insignificant energy from the projection of Buzhu Mountain, and even the energy that was reduced to many levels of dimension. More energy was merged by the projection of Buzhu Mountain, making it more condensed, and even tending to transform into reality. If the restricted energy is directly absorbed in large quantities, with the current nature of Mount Buzhu, there is a risk of direct collapse, and even the entire prehistoric world, and even infinite chaos. However, even so, only absorbing a part of the energy of the real small world that has been diluted by a large amount, it also makes Mount Buzhu begin to grow rapidly. The power contained is more and more vast, and the endless and vast energy torrent radiates rapidly to the entire prehistoric world with Mount Buzhu as the core. This makes the entire prehistoric world, which originally formed spiritual energy particles and became much thinner after being promoted and upgraded. In just this short period of time, it has been fully restored, even more than a little, and is still growing rapidly. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 42. In addition to the fact that the spiritual energy of the world in the prehistoric world has been fully replenished and has become more concentrated. The most important thing is that Buzhu Mountain, and even the essence of the entire prehistoric world, has been slightly sublimated and has moved closer to reality. This made Yuan Meng very happy. As long as the small world of Buzhu Mountain exists for one day, the speed of its transformation from prehistoric world to reality will be greatly accelerated, far exceeding his own slow practice and condensation. And Yuan Meng murmured in his heart. The previous discovery had made him secretly sigh that this time's harvest was much greater than his successful condensation of spiritual energy particles. This can shorten his future growth by a lot of time, but he didn't expect that there are still surprises waiting for him. Yuan Meng's heart merged with the world and integrated into Buzhu Mountain. Following the induction in the dark, he sent a wisp of his mind and will to an unknown place following the connection in the dark. Swish. Yuan Meng felt a trance for a while, and when he woke up again, he had another perspective in his mind. Yuan Meng's heart moved slightly, and he knew where another perspective was. That was the location of the Buzhu Mountain projection, the Buzhu Mountain small world. Yuan Meng's mind was now fused with the Buzhu Mountain projection, and he observed the entire Buzhu Mountain small world through the perspective of the Buzhu Mountain projection. And it was this deep fusion that made Yuan Meng discover many things that he had never noticed before. After the Buzhu Mountain projection suppressed the strange existence and merged with the earth, it vaguely became the will of heaven and earth in that small world. Although Yuan Meng didn't know why it was like this, he could vaguely understand that there should be no will of heaven and earth in that small world. After Yu Jukan and others mistakenly entered it, the thoughts of the crowd were gradually captured by the small world, combined with the energy and characteristics of the small world itself, which gradually formed the strange existence. This is why, at the beginning, only some mysterious ghosts appeared. They were just the manifestation of the terrifying ghosts in the hearts of the people, just illusory images. However, as time passed, people's fear of various ghosts continued to deepen, which led to the appearance of more and more different ghosts, and finally merged into that unpredictable weird existence. Therefore, to a certain extent, that weird existence was the embryonic form of the will of heaven and earth formed by the small world and the thoughts of Yu Jukan. This is why it has never been killed, even if it was completely crushed and destroyed by Yuan Meng with the star power, it could not be killed. Because it itself, to a certain extent, represents the will of heaven and earth. No matter how it is killed, it will revive again from heaven and earth. As for the will of heaven and earth, why is it such a weird existence? It is just because the thoughts of the people are mixed, and in the darkness, there is more fear of various ghosts, which formed such a weird existence. It will follow the understanding of ghosts in everyone's mind and constantly kill the lives that enter it. And the first people it wants to kill are naturally Yu Jukan and others who caused its birth and have been in it. It can be said that the experience of Yu Jukan and others was caused by themselves. It was because of their own fear and understanding of ghosts that the strange existence was born. However, this is not the fault of Yu Jukan and others. After all, in such absolute darkness, people who can be calm and even yearn for beauty are rare. In other words, as long as there are such areas in the world and someone strays into them, most of them will form such a strange will of heaven and earth and kill the creatures that enter them. Moreover, these strange existences will be resurrected again even if they are killed. Probably, they can only block such areas and prohibit everyone from entering them. Yuan Meng is different. He uses the power of his own spiritual will to open up the chaos. All his mental will and thoughts are firmly locked by the chaos. They will not be emitted from the body, but will naturally enter the chaos. Moreover, after practicing, Yuan Meng has absolute control over every bit of his own power and every mental thought, and his mental will is extremely restrained. Therefore, when Yuan Meng enters such a small world area, because of the restraint of his spiritual will, he will not form such a chaotic and complicated small world will, nor will he strengthen those distorted small world wills. However, when Yuan Meng manifested the projection of Mount Buzhu, the situation was completely different. With Yuan Meng's current spiritual will, he is completely incomparable to Yu Jukan and others. Therefore, even if the mental spirits of several people are the first to combine with the small world, forming a strange existence similar to the will of the small world. But when Yuan Meng manifested the projection of Mount Buzhu, he still usurped part of the authority of the small world, causing a hazy glow to radiate from his body, dividing part of the small world. After suppressing the strange existence, he took it as the source and the projection of Mount Buzhu as the core, completely usurping all the power of that small world, and completely united with it, and also became the will of heaven in the small world. Of course, this is not completely accurate. To be honest, that strange existence is the real heavenly Dao of the small world, and the projection of Mount Buzhu should be almost the same as the legendary Hung Jun, who is in harmony with the Dao. It's just that Hung Jun's harmony with the Dao is based on the heavenly Dao. As the saying goes, there are 50 great Daos, 49 heavenly Daos, and one of them is missing. It is precisely because the heavenly Dao is incomplete that Hung Jun's harmony with the Dao is to make up for the missing one of the heavenly Dao. The projection of Mount Buzhu is completely different. It completely suppresses the heavenly will of the small world, and forcibly combines the heaven and the earth. After all, the heavenly will of the small world, the strange existence, is just the pseudo-heavenly will formed by the instinctive emission of Yu Jukan and others' thoughts and the energy of the small world, rather than the real heavenly will that was born independently in the small world. Although the projection of Mount Buzhu is only a projection of the illusory Buzhu mountain in the prehistoric world, in essence, Mount Buzhu belongs to the core of the prehistoric world, and naturally contains a part of the heavenly will of the prehistoric world. Even if it was just a projection of Mount Buzhu, in this small world without the will of heaven and earth, it could be said to be naturally compatible with it. Therefore, after suppressing the strange existence, the projection of Mount Buzhu naturally merged into the small world and became the core of that small world, and the trace of will of heaven contained in it naturally became the will of heaven and earth of that small world. Feeling that he could control the small world relatively easily, although he could not say that he could do whatever he wanted, Yuan Meng could not help but feel happy.